All right. Dustin Devlin, welcome to the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast. How the heck are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing really good, man. I'm happy to be here with you. Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. Excited to record with you today. You are a founder and creative director at Vagrants. So pumped to talk with you about Vagrants, how you got into all this, and your advice to the students out there, recent grads, and then people in the industry. Maybe marketing professionals, maybe current advertising agency professionals. We want to hit it all. Does that sound good with you, Dustin?
Well, that's what we're doing. Yeah, let's do it.
Cool beans. So tell us about you. I mean, where are you from? Where are you recording right now, man?
So I'm in the Vagrants office right now. You can see behind me some action going on. We're looking into our post-production department there. Um, we just got in this space about a year ago and built it out, kind of remodeled it. And it's been really good because Vagrants has been kind of jumping around from home to home since we started about 8 years ago. But I guess going back, where am I from? I come from. I was born on the Cape. Let's start it off. Let's start off with the story of my life. I was born on the
Yeah.
Cape. No, uh, I'm a Massachusetts kid, born and bred. Went down south for high school. Came back up here for college, and kind of always knew that I was going to live in Boston.
Austin's dope.
And yeah, it's a great city. It's a really great city to live in. You know, I've been around the country a lot, with work and shooting, and got to see a lot of corners. There's a lot I love about every city. I'm sort of notorious whenever we're shooting in a city to be like, hey, I could picture myself living here.
Yeah, me
But
too. Yeah.
there's this feeling of relief that you get flying into Boston.
Yeah, it's
That's just
home.
like this feels like home, and this is a really great place to call home. But
Where would you say,
um,
like, where'd you get close? Like, what city were you like, do you kind of still think about if it wasn't Boston?
Oh man, I'm a surfer and just like lover of the water, the ocean, the beach. So I can't really be that far away from the water. So that takes out a considerable portion. Although I was just in Chicago, um, saw the city life by the lake, which is pretty cool. I think the city that speaks to me most, and it's the city that I'm always like, could I live here? Could I do it? Is New York. I'm always, there for work a lot. I know a lot of people. I've gone there enough where it does
Yeah.
start to feel familiar. But Boston is just, I always say Boston is just like a lower stakes New York. It's just like,
Yeah.
it's not as scary. It's not as difficult. It's not as hard to get around. I guess it's creeping on becoming as expensive. But I actually live in Maine now. In COVID, my wife and I moved up to Maine. So we live just over the border in Kittery, Maine. And I come down to the office 2, sometimes 3 days a week.
What brought you to
Mainly.
Maine? What, just quieter, a little bit more relaxing? What's going on there?
Yeah, as a I born and raised on the Cape. I always kind of lived on the water and always wanted to get back to that.
Hmm.
The Cape is just kind of like a bit too far and a bit too exclusive.
Hmm.
Um, and also just doesn't really have like a year-round community. It's very much a summer lifestyle place. So we started looking north. As a surfer, I'm always kind of exploring coastal areas and really fell in love with that area. Continued to go up. My wife actually worked in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, which is right over the border. So she was going up there a lot. We just kind of became really familiar with the area, and then through COVID, everybody was trying to flee the city and ended
Hmm.
up in Maine. So we love it up there, and it's a really great place to live year round.
Got it. I'll have to check it out. I I think it's interesting anytime like talking about Boston, I feel like there's a lot of parallels with Chicago and just, it's a big city. It's not New York, but it's still like powerful. You can get a lot of stuff done there. But a lot of the people I can really vibe with that are from Boston, it seems
Yeah,
like.
I was just in Chicago, doing a lot of meetings last week, and yeah, everyone I met, it's the same thing. There's just like this identity, kind of this like shared identity where we're like twins separated at birth, Boston
Yeah.
and Chicago. I feel
Yeah.
like we have a lot in common.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
you
cool.
know, but
How would
we don't
you?
know anything about each other. That's
No,
funny.
no, no. Southie, I think I know. I see Mark Wahlberg movies. That's about it.
Yeah,
Good,
I'm the same
good
way.
sports, really good sports,
Yeah.
obviously. How would you define like the ad market in Boston compared to New York, Chicago, LA? How would you, today, how would you personify that?
Boston's a big advertising city, and it kind of gets overlooked in that respect. But there's been a lot of agencies that have been here for a long time. There's been a lot of real agency powerhouses that have kind of like come and go over the years. I think we're in kind of a rebirth right now of the Boston agency scene. There's a lot of really competitive smaller agencies that are starting to gain a lot of traction. So to me, Boston has always been a rich agency scene, and I think that's because there's a lot of business here. There's a lot of businesses based out of here. You probably don't think of it, but Boston is a shoe city. Pretty much every major shoe brand outside of Nike has a headquarters here. So that makes up a big portion of our business. There's a lot of financial. There's a lot of medical. There's a lot of startups now. Tech is obviously coming big in Boston. So in general, there's just a lot going on here, and there's a lot of reasons to be in the advertising and marketing industry here.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Headquarters of companies, you're going to find really strong agencies, probably some more established, some new popping up. And it's interesting to see where like company headquarters are going towards. I hear a lot of Austin. Uh,
Yeah,
that's the real one top of mind outside of the big
everyone's
cities,
going to
but
Austin. Yeah.
for sure. So where does Vagrants sit in the mix in the ad agency market, in creativity, production houses? Like, how do you guys fit in Boston, and what's your identity? How are you known? How would you like to be known?
Yeah, so Vagrants so I always say we're a production company first and foremost. You know, our passion is filmmaking. Our passion is commercial directing, editing, post production, all that stuff. That is the stuff that we do strongest. That's our core. Um, but as this industry's evolved and relationships have evolved, the way things get made has evolved. Um, we've had to evolve, right? And what we always were at our foundation were creative problem solvers, right? That's what it is to be a filmmaker. What is the amount of funds that I have to work with? What is the creative outlook, and how do I best achieve the highest quality result with the means that I've been given, right? And that's what we try to do. We say it's problem solving artfully, right? We have to really think critically about what we're doing and make a decision on what is the biggest, best ad that we can bring to something creatively, so that this concept lands, and not only lands but really performs. And so that's really what we do. We do a lot of creative development in tandem with production and producing, project management early on, scoping, bidding, estimation. These things are critical, and they can't be looked at, in a vacuum apart from creative, right? Like, we always need to be thinking about creative within the realm of budget. And we call that working within the sandbox, right? You tell us the sandbox, tell us how big it is, and we're going to make the best sandcastle we can within the confines of that box.
Yeah, yeah. No, you would hope for a large sandbox every time. Is that the case in the industry today?
I think we all hope to see that large sandbox. I
Yeah.
think those sandboxes
Yeah. Tell
are
us about the
less and less.
sandboxes today.
um, just a reality of the industry. Like, we can't. I think the industry was in denial for a really long time. I think we were all. I come from the agency environment. I worked, within the agency as an editor, and on a creative team. And I think when we were there, this is, kind of early 2010s. There was a lot of people within the agency saying, we're just going through a moment here. 2008, we're rising out of the ashes, and things are going to come back. And we just got to get through. With social coming in and everything, things are changing, but everything's going to come back. We're going to be okay. And I think we've all kind of gotten to the point where this is a new era, right? And it's changing even faster at a faster rate, year over year, right? And so, really, the name of the game to me is it's adaptation, right? Like, how can we continue to execute this art of production and filmmaking and creative storytelling, with changing tools, with changing means, with changing expectations, with this sort of multiplication of what we are making, the sort of like, you know, deliverable list that we have to work through, and every project has just grown exponentially.
Yeah.
So and we have to do it all with less financial support, right? Less budget. So how do you do that, right? And that's what our business is figuring out, for our agency partners, for our brand partners. How do we help you execute a creative vision in a changing landscape?
Totally. Totally. Yeah. You gotta get nimble, you gotta get scrappy, you gotta get creative.
Yeah.
And that might drive some people away, I would imagine.
I think it does. I think for a while, that word nimble got overused quite a bit. And I think people kind of equated it with the dirty word, and you hear the good, fast, and cheap,
Yeah, only two.
statement thrown around a lot. And the reality is that, what we do is inherently valuable, and the work that we do is inherently expensive. Things cost money, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But the strategy in what we do and the vision in what we do, is critical, because without those things, it's just line items on a budget, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what's between those lines is creative development and execution and vision, and that's where Vagrants lives. In a triple bidding process, you're going to see three budgets that are, in 2D, black and white, look exactly the same, right? But those three companies are going to do, very different things with those resources. And that we just like to, create a brand and a creative value behind the work that we do, so that people choose us over two other people.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, it's not too different from agency, right? So for the people listening, that are, from the agency background or want to break into a traditional agency, I mean, agencies are doing the same stuff essentially. They're competing
Yeah.
with each other to get the attention of brands and their clients. And it's a very similar process. It's just, they're chasing after the brands directly. Do you go after brands directly too? Just a quick question there.
It's something that we're evolving into.
Mm.
A lot of our work is still coming from agencies,
Okay.
and will continue to come from agencies. And, we are very sensitive not to compete with agencies on that front. And
Okay.
I always say we don't do what agencies do. We're not doing strategy.
Yeah.
I always like to say we're coming up with great ideas of what to do with a budget that has already been strategized.
Right. Good
And
clarification. But
sometimes we just need to fill that void, and that's what we're
Totally.
able to do.
Totally. That's good clarifying there. So
I
tell
also
me,
find that sorry, Geno.
run it.
I don't want to be like misquoted or anything, or my agency partners being like, "Hey, man, stop eating my lunch." I think the other thing to realize too is that agencies are changing, and they're being stretched very thin.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, the same kind of work that we're doing with our brand partners, in creative development, and that sort of like, um, ideating within the sandbox, right? That's to help. We do that with agencies as well. A
Yeah,
lot of the ways agency and brand partners are built differently, but we're trying to do the same exact thing. And really what Vagrants tries to do is just be flexible and be understanding and augment our team in a way that helps best execute the project.
totally. How'd you come up with the name Vagrants?
Oh my God. Um, very, very long nights for about 2.5 weeks with my business partner Winston, and my wife Tracy. She was sort of like the bounce board where we just chuck names at her and she'd be like, yeah, no, yeah, no. And I think we were throwing around the name Vagabond a lot, and then we're like, God damn, there's already a Vagabond. I forget what it is, but um, and then my wife said, "What about Vagrants?" And me and my business partner were like, "No, that's not it." And then we continued to throw names around for probably another 2 weeks, and then we came back to it. We're like, Vagrants, Vagrants. There's something there. Um, we were throwing around names that were plural, and that was important to us because the name should be inclusive of everything that it takes to get production done. It takes an army, right? And really, when we are working with people, we want them to be a part of our army, right? And that we're all one working together for the same purpose. So it was really important to have that sort of inclusive Vagrants plural title. The other thing is my business partner and I, what kind of really bonds us is that we both, traveled around a lot in our youth and kind of felt like we were, at times homeless, directionless, but comfortable in that state. That really kind of bonded us from the beginning and felt true to our character. And we use it as a verb, like, we're vagranting, or that as an adjective, right? That feels very vagranty, so it's taken multiple forms. I'll actually mention a creative director that when I was telling him we were going to name our company Vagrants, he said, you can't do that. And I was like, why? He goes, it sounds like fragrance. I was like, you know what, man? You might be
No,
right, but I have to see this
no,
out. But
no. It's a good
yeah, no
lesson
one's ever
there.
confused us for fragrance.
No, and that's a good lesson to everybody listening to. It's like, you can say no to advice. Like, doesn't matter who
You
it
have
is.
to.
Like, sometimes you just got to go with your gut there, and that was a good call. Like, I didn't even
Yeah,
think about that. Like, that might have been the only time anybody's ever thought about it, is because you brought it up right now. But that's gone.
I'm
Like,
glad.
no, yeah,
Yeah, everybody, when you're starting a company, advice is coming from all angles, whether you want it or not.
no,
And I always tell people who are setting off on their own to listen to everybody, but really you gotta trust your gut.
yeah. I mean, they're really just good soundboards for you to figure out your own idea. Like,
Exactly.
you're gonna know, and it's just talking it through with somebody just to listen. You can do it with a wall sometimes. Like, that's how I did with breaking and entering. Like, I wasn't actually looking for their feedback. It was more of a me working it out and then understanding it, and then I was like, okay, I'm sold. Like,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
maybe I'm just like whatever that word is, stubborn. But when you know, so that's cool.
Great. Great podcast name, by the way. I will say, breaking and entering, very solid.
Thanks, man. I created that at 22 years old in my basement, and the extent my parents' basement watching Tiger King, and it's like still like we're still able to come up with like brand extensions, like Accomplice, like an app for people to like connect with different creatives, like uh Talent Unmasked and Crowbar Awards. Like, it's just a larger brand play that we can create all these different sub items from. So I'm like, every time
Yeah.
we need a new name for something, I'm like, good thing we got a strong brand platform that we can pick from. Like, and I'm always like
Yeah.
proud of 22-year-old Geno when I
Yep.
go back to that.
For having that vision while watching Tiger King.
Yeah, that show. Oh my gosh. Cool, man. So we got the name down. So I got to talk about the work, because that
Yep.
that's crucial, right? Because we can talk about branding. It's like, your vision and all that, but really people will want to work with you based off of the work. It's what matters. So do you want to talk about one recently, one that sticks out, something that you're really proud of that you guys have created a campaign and ad specifically that people should look up after listening to this?
Man, I always go to like the most recent thing because we're really in this industry. You're only as good as your last thing, you know.
Yeah, I like that.
We've done some great work in the past, but yeah, we just did something with a brand partner, company based here in Boston, Car Gurus.
Nice.
This was one where they came to us pretty wide open, but again, they had strategy in place, right? That strategy was they wanted to move in a direction of working with a celebrity spokesperson. They were looking for a spokesperson that fit these brand ideals. That Car Gurus is trustworthy, and they're a guide, they're a coach when you're going through the car buying experience. So they kind of had this archetype, and we worked with them through the process of finding that right celebrity partner.
Oh, wow.
There was a talent agency working along with us, and we kind of like did some sort of pre-concepting with a few different folks before we arrived on the right person, which is Drew Brees, which was honestly
Love Drew Brees.
great. Yeah, I was so psyched, when he came into the conversation, and just really kind of fit right away into what we were doing. Um, and Yeah, so we, fleshed out some concepts. Whenever we're doing creative work as a production company, it's like it is compressed timeline, right? Like, we're
Hmm.
doing things to get to. I always say we're doing creative development to get to the point where we're making stuff, and that has to happen very quick in the production cycle.
Right.
So we concepted for a few weeks, aligned, got out to San Diego, shooting with Drew. Um, awesome shoot. He came, on set just ready to execute. Guy's an
Yeah.
absolute professional. So
Working
dialed.
with athletes, I
Uh,
bet they just come prepared, like star athletes like that. They're not going to mess
they're
around.
either
Like,
they're either super prepared or not prepared at all.
oh,
There's
really?
no middle ground. There's
Really? Yeah.
absolutely
I
no
mean, a
middle ground.
quarterback's got to be one of the hardest positions in any sport. Like the smartest person, like on the team, like
Yeah.
especially to be like one of the best quarterbacks of all time. Like he's got he's got to have that discipline and like ready to rock and
Yeah,
roll.
absolutely. And just like, was there to work, right?
Love that.
Didn't want to waste any time. Like, let's do it. And was very amenable. We were doing social videos alongside
Yeah,
our main commercial spot with photo stills. This is sort of what we do every job now.
yeah. All the
He was bouncing
extensions.
around.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. But he was bouncing around from thing to thing, just perfectly fluid, and had a great vibe the entire day too, which is really important.
Nice.
Um, so yeah, came back here to Vagrants headquarters, went right into post production. Our editor Tyler Clinton really knocked it out of the park. A lot of revisions, a lot of iterating. When we're in post is to us very connected to the original creative concepting round. We're always, our editors are brought in from the very beginning. We're always working with them
Mhm.
as we're even considering what we're going to go out and capture. So we bring that creative spirit into post production as we're sort of, you know, um, kind of figuring out what these deliverables are going to be. We kind of leave it a little wide open purposely because you find some of that magic in the edit
Right.
suite of, this is really working. This really isn't. Let's go all in on this direction.
Some wiggle
So,
room. Yeah.
yep. so Tyler really did a great job leading us through that process. Our client was super involved throughout, and really positive, has some really great feedback from round to round, and really helped make this thing great. And then we deliver, and what happens a lot of times, I think a lot of production companies, even agency folks, will sympathize with this. You finish something, it's this mad dash to the finish line, right? And then the brand or whoever sits on it
Yeah. Yeah.
for 2 to 3 weeks, and we're like all checking our feed nervously, when is it going to go live, when is it going to go live? But to Car Guru's credit, just goes out there right away.
There we go.
And it was already out on social yesterday. We delivered on Friday, so
Nice,
um,
dude. So that
yeah,
was a
so
quick turnaround. Yeah.
it was really awesome, and already getting some really great feedback
Nice.
online, and it's always great to feel that, to bask in the sun for a minute before you get thrown into the next
Next one.
fire.
Yeah, man. That's a good lifestyle if that's for you. It's a lot of keep going. What's the next thing? Keep hunting. I love it.
Yep.
All right, so I need to understand now, like basically from how you broke into all of this. How did you break in, and then how can people break in to production working at Vagrants, let's say today? Like there's got to be some differences, and like we've already talked about the changing landscape of the sandbox and like budgets and expectations. So how did you break in, and then how can people break in today is the big question.
Yeah. There is no easy, you know, checklist of do these things and everything's going to happen for you. I consider myself very lucky to be in the position I am. And because of that, I do everything in my power to help guide people, um, trying to find their way in the industry, trying to find their niche, trying to find their role, whatever it may be. And so I make myself available for that. So the first thing I'll say is, if you're listening to this and you are trying to break into the industry, look me up. I try to have as many of these conversations as I can. I believe in that sort of like collective goodwill will do,
Love
good
that.
things for all parties involved. So, um, but I will say this. So I struggled for a while. I came out of college, had a great job, right out the gates, working with a local production company here, DGA Productions, shout out. Um, I was working on a lot of ESPN stuff. I was working on a pretty popular cooking show. It was a you know great sort of year, 2 years out of college, and then 2008 hit, and the floor fell out from the industry. Everything literally shut off overnight. Marketing budgets were the first to get slashed in every major company, and especially people who are on the low, end of the totem pole were the first to go. And also, what happened in that same window is that Canon announced the 5D, and the 5D completely revolutionized video overnight. Um, Funny, the production company I had been working with at the time had just invested in these cameras that were upwards of $90,000, right? And then overnight, you have a camera that comes out in the market that can do the same exact thing for $5,000, right? That's
Damn.
that's a major drop off the cliff.
You hate to
And
see that.
so this is where the good, fast, and cheap era was born. Really, I think people, agencies and brand side, saw what you could do and say, what are we doing with these gigantic crews? And oh, by the way, these things aren't just going to broadcast TV anymore; they're going to this thing called YouTube, and we can all do it for cheap. Hey, my kid's got a camera and a laptop, and he can go out and shoot it. So why can't you do it? Right. Like
Gosh,
that was the attitude.
I hate that.
And so that made me take a big step back. I also needed a job. So I went and I actually taught high school in my hometown. There was a local access TV station that was positioned at the high school. And I ran that TV station and also taught kids, just sort of the basics of filmmaking and videography. And I loved it so much. It was such a good job. And I loved working with kids. I loved, kind of growing creative talent. And it's actually funny now, years after that, I've seen a lot of them come up in the industry. A lot of them have worked with me and worked with other folks that I've connected them with. So that's been cool to see. But I did that for a number of years. I always knew that it was kind of a temporary thing, that I was basically like a 23-year-old doing like a 53-year-old's job. And I really needed to get back into the industry. And I always knew advertising was it for me. Um, didn't even really spend time thinking about much else. Started knocking on as many agency doors as I could. Um, Having my summers off was great. I had a lot of opportunities for freelance work. I started to grow that way, and then eventually got a job at a marketing company. That company got bought by Publicis. Um, got another job through another Publicis company that was an ad agency, Sapient Nitro at the time. And next thing you know, I was editing Dunkin Donuts commercials, left and right, which was like a huge brand to have for the agency, and in this area, it just didn't get bigger than Dunkin. Um, so then I kind of really called the craft of being an agency editor. Developing agency editor is different than a post house editor, where you are a part of the creative team, and you have to do a lot of problem solving. Also, you're not just an editor. Like, you might be editing something one day, and then the next day you got to go shoot something in the closet tabletop studio that we had that's going to end up on Instagram the next day. So I was doing a lot of that kind of stuff, and just making it work, and um, being an extension, sort of like the execution arm of my creative team.
Yeah.
And that kind of led to some directing opportunities within the agency. I kind of got one big break to direct a Dunkin commercial. And, at that time, I think a lot of people listening to this, they probably are working for an agency that is in the midst of a buyout, a big company coming in and taking over, and that's what happened with the agency I was at. And it really just became time to go, and made the leap into directing, sort of freelance. But that didn't last long. I really quickly found my way to starting Vagrants and taking more of an entrepreneurial route. I knew that I needed a brand behind me that, if I was going to do great work, it wasn't just going to be me, right? It's always been collaboration from the word go for me, and I knew that I needed to build a team around me
Yeah.
to do it, and had a great business partner that was perfectly aligned with what we were trying to do. Felt the same exact way, coming from a different angle, and that was really the seeds that started Vagrants. From there, it was a lot of long nights, a lot of hard work, a lot
Yeah.
of work that we're really proud of, but eventually, kind of coalesced into where we're at now. So
Incredible.
I guess in a roundabout way, it, there is no silver bullet, right? But um, be flexible in knowing that your career path isn't going to be straight.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the skills that have made me a good business owner, and a good, um, creative director, and sort of manager of people, is working at a school, working with kids. I think I've taken a lot of those skills into this version of me, and just because you're in a situation that isn't your dream situation doesn't mean that there isn't something to be gained. Everything is fluid, everything is changing. So just be ready for that change, but also be present with where you're at, and know that everything you're doing is leading somewhere.
Love it. Well said. Well said. So help illuminate me real quick then. For, let's say, the listeners and myself, let's just say theoretically, I want to work at a production company. What are the type of entry level roles, or like entry-ish level roles? Where can you start out? Are there different disciplines, or is it just production, producer, directing? What are the options for the junior folks?
Yeah, the answer is, so at Vagrants, we always we look for people. You don't come out of college as a director,
Right,
You
right,
know,
right. That's like you saying I want to be a creative director. Yeah. It's like, or like,
right.
yeah, yeah. But
I
so
think a
what
lot
are
of
those
people,
options?
yeah, I think a lot of people coming out of college are sort of conditioned to that because in a film school you probably have gotten opportunities to direct, and
Mm.
when I completely understand, once you've had a taste of the sauce, you
Yeah,
don't want to
yeah,
go backwards, right?
yeah.
Like directing a student film
Which is a great
is kind
experience,
of
but
similar to, yeah. But so you have to be willing to humble yourself a little bit, and I think entry level jobs in our industry that we look for, it starts with production assistants. I think that's the easiest way to get involved. We're always looking for production assistants. We also have some internship roles that we fill year over year. But if I'm just giving this advice universally to
yeah,
people anywhere,
universal. Perfect.
um, I'm saying try as many hats on as you possibly can. Even if you're like, I want to be a director or I want to be a producer, try editing, try shooting, try script writing, try all of these things. The worst that's going to happen is that you're going to say, well, I don't like that, so I'm not going to do that again. And then what are you going to do the next time? You're going to look to partner with somebody that can do the thing that you don't want to do. And in the process, you're going to be building your network and building your ability to pull off difficult and complex things.
Yeah.
And you're going to, by virtue of that, you're just going to get more comfortable into your lane and where you want to follow. You're going to learn more from people that are sort of in that lane, but just above you. Right. And it's going to give you a clear vision on where you want to go. The other thing that's important is that, like, we look at these things, producer, director, editor, as sort of unitary things, but those things are have varieties within them, right? Like producers, there's line producers, there's more creative producers, there's agency producers, there's executive producers, there's like project managers, there's post producers, right? There's all these different lanes and flavors
Now we're
within that
talking.
thing.
Just even talking, saying the names of these options for people that they can go look up is so important. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Like, what's a colorist? I don't know what that.
Color, we didn't talk about color.
Yeah,
Color
yeah.
that color is a whole different flavor
Well,
on its own.
and we'll kind of like hint that if this world is calling, then maybe you can talk with them. And it seems like you have a passion for mentorship, obviously. So
Yep,
maybe
yep.
they can hit you up or email you. What's the best way for the people, anybody, whether it's junior level folks or if it is an agency that wants to work with you, how can they reach out and say hello?
Yeah, look us up on the website, vagrants.com. Our info is up there. It's very transparent. You can reach out to me directly, or reach out to Vagrants more broadly. What I will say is that, be persistent. I think anyone's going to say that. If we know the people who really want it are the people that are going to put in that extra effort to get it. And if I've gotten an email 2-3 times from you, I'm not going to write you off. I'm more likely to respond and say, hey,
Yeah.
sorry, I've been ignoring you, but let's talk. And so that doesn't just go for me, that goes for anybody. Um, but yeah, if I'm gonna kind of leave like one more nugget, it's that, you know be a generalist when you're first getting into the industry. Be open to options, um, but if there is that thing that in the back of your mind that says, I picture myself doing this, um, be communicative about that, because I think that's the hardest part. People inherently want to help other people, but we can't help you if we don't know where you want to go. So make sure and don't be bashful. Don't think that you're being selfish or anything like that. Like, I want to know when a PA steps onto my set that, hey, I want to be a DP. Great, now I know who to introduce you to. I know what opportunities to throw your way. Like, that's what we want to know.
Yeah, manifest it, bring it out in the world, let people know your
Yes.
vision. And it's not like I used to think that you have to hide it and like work on it on the side in the nighttime, and like when you're ready to reveal to the world that you have the skills. Now you can start manifesting it and talking about it beforehand. That's how you get the help. So
That's right.
that's really good stuff. So Dustin, thank you for coming on. I hope people reach out. I hope people want to work with you more because of this conversation. And we will be in touch. But golden stuff, man. I wish you all the best, and the future for Vagrants will be great. I know.
Awesome, Gino. Thanks so much for having me on. This is a really good time.
Rock and roll.